All right, we are here with Ryan Poles, the general manager of the Chicago Bears, a popular man here in a crowded convention center in Indianapolis. I'm going through the cap space. I'm a dork. I like checking out the cap space, and I want to ask you a theoretical question to get going here. You have $79 million in cap space right now, according to Over the Cap. Do you think there is such a thing as too much cap space?
No. No, you want as much flexibility as possible.
But don't you want to be, like, sometimes I find there's almost more cap space sometimes than great players to spend the cap space on. So as a general manager, kind of how do you balance that short and long term in terms of being able to spend that cap space?
Yeah, I think, you can usually start off with a quarterback position and where you are there and build from there. But having the flexibility to acquire players to bring onto your roster, but I think the other important piece that we don't really talk about that much is extending and paying the guys that are on your roster. And we should have some opportunities to do both of those things this year. So the flexibility has been great, and I got to give a lot of credit to Matt Feinstein, who's just promoted to VP of Football Operations, our administration, for setting us up well and making sure that we're thoughtful in the way that we spend, how we do our contracts, both short-term and long-term. So it's helped us be in this position to keep growing.
How do you guys talk as a staff about combinations? Because obviously you guys always like to add and develop in the draft, and you have done that. You also always like to bring in key pieces, one or two, that really can supplement that young core as well. How do you talk about combinations? How do you argue, too, about combinations?
Yeah, we go around and around and different philosophies on how to build a roster. Obviously, you would love to always go through the draft and develop your own players. But there's going to be opportunities that pop up where there's certain teams that have situations where they're kind of maxed out based on having a veteran quarterback on the roster, that they have to make tough decisions, and that brings up opportunities for us to have cap space to bring those players on. So you want to be strategic with it. I think the big thing is making sure you know what type of player you're getting, because you don't get to do the research that you do while you're at the combine. You can't sit down and talk to them. So there is some risk there. So previous relationships, and also some research along the way to make sure you're bringing the right type of guys that fit your culture.
I think that's so interesting because you also have brand new perspective via Ben coming in, sort of a fresh set of eyes on not just you guys' processes, the collaborative efforts as well, but also just his relationships with players and people that he knows. What has that been like, onboarding him? But also, I imagine he's looking at different parts of y'all's process with a brand new set of eyes on it. Yeah,
it's been really good. Anytime you can add a different perspective and make those tweaks and changes to make your process even better, it's critical to growth, and make sure that you're keeping up with the times, and you're also staying open-minded in how you do things. One thing that we do that I'm proud of is any new staff member that comes in, we do a cohabitation report, so that player goes through all the players in free agency that they've touched, and that could be over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And they do a 1 or 2 liner to just give us some more information about the players that we could potentially bring in the building. Yeah,
and some of the guys that are on my top 101 free agents list.
What a plug.
We're coached up by Ben Johnson last year, Kevin Zeitler. So that sort of brings a question. I can almost hear the Bears fans in my life saying, ask him about the offensive line. You haven't spent a lot in free agency. Not that you haven't brought in free agents in the past, but you've built a little more through the draft on the offensive line. You have 3 guys that were playing starting snaps last year that are in free agency. Do you think you'll push a little more in free agency with the offensive line this year?
Yeah, I think there's a good opportunity for us to do that. When you look at our interior, there's some space there where I think we can move the needle and get our team to take the next step. Obviously, when you do that, you get added protection in the pass game. But I think more importantly, running the ball efficiently, which creates balance. And we all know when you get to the backside of the season, December, January, February, the ability to run the ball is critical. So we'll be taking a hard look at that spot.
I think an underrated and probably not spoken about as much element of finding those guys is the partnerships and the relationships that the players have to learn each other too. With the center quarterback, those guys have to learn each other just as much as you have to project what will be the right fit. So what kind of center does Caleb Williams need in his life right now? Like what qualities do you think are best partnered with him? Because that could be a 10-year relationship if it works.
Yeah, no, it's important. I start with overall just intelligence, and that can come in different ways. If you were to go through the draft process, that player has to have a great understanding of the game, of defenses, and be a high-end communicator to get everything lined up as much as possible. If you go the route of free agency, that command up front is going to be critical. The more you can take off a young quarterback's plate at the line of scrimmage, the faster that they can play and make their decisions, which is important. So we'll be looking at both of those things on both the draft and free agency.
Yeah, you're a former lineman. I don't need to tell you that. It is hard to find.
I saw him kind of light up a little bit when we were like, oh, line, here we go.
It is hard. It is hard. Every year I make that list. It is hard to find offensive linemen in free agency just because they are that value. You have one, so I'm going to throw up just a couple of your free agent names at you. Just Tevin Jenkins is a guy who's played a lot for you, and then Keenan Allen. Kind of where are you at with maybe trying to retain those two guys this year?
Yeah, so that's part of the combine process. We're going to spend time with their reps and clear that up with them. In terms of direction, there's a lot of different factors. There's money, there's age, there's durability, things like that. So we'll make sure we get with them and get a clear picture on how we're going to move forward.
At the same time, you guys will be interviewing prospects, and again, it's kind of I kind of love this when you have a new head coach, because you learn a lot about each other in a tiny room very quickly, right?
Yes, you do.
And I know you went through the interview process with him, so you know him pretty well already. But what have you learned about Ben? How does he interview players? What do you like about it? What might you say that we can't see, that we don't know about?
He's got a little extra something,
He's got some juice
than
to
I
him.
expected.
Little chip watch on the shoulder, I think. You know?
I talked about that. There was a weird narrative before that he didn't have a lot of juice and he was just kind of a smart guy that would sit in the corner. That is not even close to being the truth. He's got a lot of energy, but what I like about just the interview process with the players, or talking strategy on how to put a team together, or even building a staff, he is very, very thoughtful and strategic on how he wants to do it. He values the team dynamics of the chemistry of how everything's going to work together. But in these interviews, I think also coming from the offensive coordinator's position, we did some defensive guys yesterday. He took a step back and just let Dennis and our position coaches do their thing, so we all can learn, about the player and what he knows and what he doesn't know.
And I liked that energy. I liked that he was calling people out by name.
Oh, absolutely.
Referring to certain coaching trees by dynamic and last name. I loved it.
We're so easy in the media. Just give us a little red meat. Like, after seeing him, I was like, he is not what I heard. It is absolutely great. And so kind of thinking about that, him as the Bears head coach, it's interesting because you've been there since 22, and he is a new head coach. And sometimes, when there's a new head coach, you have a little bit of a timeline of, okay, we're going to give this guy a little time to contend and compete, but you're in a very competitive division, statistically one of the best of all time. How do you see your timeline and his timeline meeting up, and are you guys ready to go win that division this year, to compete to go win it?
Yeah, and he talked about that in the opener. We're going to get after it and really not afraid of that at all. Man, we believe we have the pieces to compete fast, and it's a beautiful thing because he's from in the division and he knows what it looks like. So we're excited to get started. All
right, Ryan Poles, general manager of the Chicago Bears, just has one of the most loyal, best fan bases in the entire world. You've got their hearts in your hand. Good luck to you this week.
Thanks, you so
Ryan.
much. Thank you.